Question 76. This is a lot of questions. From the two ideas of Torah, we learned that there are two ideas of tefillah. What are they? Number one, the classic idea of tefillah, us reaching up to Hashem from the bottom up. And number two, a kind of prayer which is from the top down. It's as if Hashem is davening and we're repeating after him. Just like in Torah, there are two ideas. In tefillah, there are also two ideas. The second idea of tefillah is that even though we're davening, but it's as if Hashem is davening first and we're simply repeating after him. Question 77. How do you understand the higher of these two ideas? What does it mean that when I'm davening, I'm simply repeating after the Eibishter? So the wording in the Maimir inside is Ha'adam hu bebittel legamri. The person is in an utter state of bittel. Utfulasahi, and his prayer is rak'eina achar akede. How do you understand this idea of davening when you're, so to speak, repeating after the Eibishter? That by the time you get to Shemoneh Esrei and you're standing in front of Hashem and you're sensing his presence, makes you like an extension of him. Like I gave you the example of people who go into the Rebbe Tichidus. I heard this from people, from a particular person, that you stood outside the Rebbe's room and you were so nervous, you were certain that you're not going to remember a word of what the Rebbe tells you. You're not going to be able to speak in the Rebbe's presence. You're not going to be able to answer any questions. And you walk into his room and there's an unusual calm and clarity. And that's Pashat the Rebbe's Mahus, that's the Rebbe's personality. The Rebbe lifted you and he brought you into his world. And you find it possible to talk. And you walk out and you have clarity about what the Rebbe told you. Because what happens is you become included in that presence and you draw strength from that presence. And that's what Yirah Ila'a means. Shemoneh Esrei is you're standing in front of Hashem and you sense his presence. When you sense his presence, you're not nervous, you're not excited, you're calm. But the calm isn't your own. The calm comes from the sense of him, and that's where the koyach to daven comes from. That's probably how I explained it on Thursday. I don't remember what I said, but that's probably how I explained it. Shemoneh Esrei is called Yirah Ila'a, higher than Ahavas Yisroel. Yirah Ila'a. Ahavas means I want Hashem to the point of Mesiras Nefesh. Yirah Ila'a means I have him. I'm in his presence and I sense him, and it quiets me. Yirah Ila'a means his feeling Hashem gives me a quiescence, but it gives me a clarity that comes from him.
Isn't that similar to what you said last time about taking 3 steps back and 3 steps forward because you're going into...
See, that's also true, but that's a simple halachic truth. This wasn't recently, I said that a long time ago. That the whole concept, the choreography of davening is to give us a sense of Hashem's presence. But if a person goes through the earlier steps of davening properly, it's not just a chitzoniistic closeness, it's a pnimiistic closeness. It's a sense of him. Now, 78. What is tefillah arichta? Now, in Nigla, tefillah arichta means a prayer with 5 more words. Hashem Sefasai Tiftach ufiya git hilasecha. Right? Yeah. Right? You add 5 words to Shemoneh Esrei, and the Shemoneh Esrei becomes a long Shemoneh Esrei. The whole point of the Rebbe is that that's not what tefillah arichta means. That when you add 5 words to Shemoneh Esrei, and the Gemara says, isn't that an interruption between Gula and Tefillah? Between Gol Yisrael and Baruch Atah? And the Gemara answers, well, it's a long Shemoneh Esrei. 5 words do not a long Shemoneh Esrei make. So Chassidus says that by adding those 5 words, the entire Shemoneh Esrei is different. Because the concept of Tefillah Arichta means where I'm standing in his presence and he gives me the power to pray. He gives me the power to pray. So again, in Nigla, Tefillah Arichta means a Shemoneh Esrei with 5 more words. In Chassidus, Shemoneh Esrei means a Shemoneh Esrei which is based on me experiencing him and him giving me the ability to daven. You see the difference? Right? In Nigla Arichta means you add 5 words, it's longer. In Pnimius, Tefillah Arichta means that your state of connection to Hashem is such that he has to give you the koyach of tefillah, and that makes your tefillah arichta, a davening that's long. You're standing in front of him, you sense him, and mitzad yourself you can't speak. But he gives you a koyach to speak. I gave the mashal of being in the Rebbe's room, which is it's a quite legitimate mashal, as strange as it sounds. I remember we talked about Paschal Yov Omar, Ibeinu, Menu Ante Chad Le Bechushbon, Ante Lo Kol Lo, Steven Kol Steven, Leis Machshava. But then it says Chad Arich, V'Chad Beinuni, V'Chad Arich, V'Chad Kisiv, V'Chad Beinuni. What does Aruch mean? Like you're standing up. The head is higher and the feet are lower, and that's the answer to your question. Tefillah Arichta means it comes from a higher place, so it extends to a lower world. That's the additional point. Right? I said in question 78, I said 3 things. Number 1, in Nigla Tefillah Arichta, you add 5 words and it becomes long. And in Pnimius, the 5 words are a symptom that the whole Shmanesra is a different Shmanesra. Because the meaning of Tefillah Arichta is Adonai Sefasai Tiftach Ofia Giti Hilasecha. I cannot speak by myself because of my sense of the presence of Elokus. He gives me words and clarity. And what is the meaning of Aruch? Long, that when you're connected higher, the prayer comes lower. Okay? Question 79. How is it connected to the Pasuk Ad Hashem Sefasai Tiftach? So again, in Nigles, because you add 5 words. And in Pnimius, because what are we saying? What are the types of the words? Hashem Sefasai Tiftach Afiyah Giti Lasecha. I stand up to pray and I can't talk. So I ask Him to give me the power to speak. That's a taich. I stand up to daven and I cannot daven, and I ask Him to give me the power to speak. I ask the Eibishter to give me the power to speak.
That does sound like an interruption.
Huh?
Sounds like an interruption.
It sounds like an interruption. Right, so the Gemara answers it's considered a longer tefillah. Chassidus explains it's a different tefillah.
Why would it matter if it's a longer tefillah? We don't have...
No, because then it's not considered a hefsek. The first bracha Shemines begins Baruch. Yeah? If it begins Ad Hashem, it's a problem, right? The Chumash begins Bereishis, but the Saturdays begin Anoichi. So instead of starting with a Beis, you're starting with an Aleph. You're adding 6 words. Tefillah Arichta means you're not separating because Shalosh Shemines. You say Shemines 6 words before Baruch.
What does the problem start with?
Huh?
What's the problem starting with Baruch?
There's no problem starting with Baruch, but there's no problem starting with Adna either. That's what the Gemara's answer is. We're saying a pasuk before. In Gemara it says you say before Shemines Ad Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, and after Shemines Yirah Ila'a. And by the way, that will be a whole thing to learn a maimer on that pasuk. Yirah Ila'a Nimrei Fi V'Hegi and Libo Fenach Hashem Tori V'Geli. At the end of Shemines, right? The Gemara says you should add this in the beginning and this in the end, and it's considered part of the Shemines itself. So in Nigla, that's called the Tefillah Arichta. We just stretched it a drop. But in Chassidus, it's a whole different tefillah. Okay, question 80. The 2 levels of tefillah have different levels of certainty that they will be granted. What is the difference between the 2? What is the difference of certainty that what I ask for I'm going to get when I daven a regular tefillah, and when I ask for if I'm going to get if I daven a tefillah arichta? The answer is if I'm davening a regular tefillah, maybe I'll get, maybe I won't get. And if I'm davening a tefillah arichta, there's no doubt that I'm going to get what I want. Why? Because a regular tefillah, the Rebbe's lashon inside, is efsheh sheyihi ikuv b'hamshacha shadei tefillah. If you want to see the words inside, it's page Reish Samach, the middle paragraph, 3 lines from the end. Efsheh sheyihi ikuv b'hamshacha shadei tefillah. It's possible there should be a blockage. When you daven regular, when you come to Hashem and say, give me because of me, sometimes the channels get closed. But if the situation of my tefillah is where I'm so in His presence that I'm asking Him to help me pray, so the Rebbe says, the prayer certainly comes true. The lashon inside, 5 lines from the end, 5 lines from the end, is there's nothing can hold it up. Because when you go higher, it comes lower. That's such a richta. There's no greater certitude that your tefillah is going to be answered because you're davening on the Eibishter's koyach, and therefore there's a certainty that the tefillah, there's no blockages. Okay, now, question 81, this I already answered. What's the connection to the tefillah being long? And again, basically it is you're going higher and it's coming lower. When you stand in front of Hashem and you feel His presence and you ask Him to give you the koyach of tefillah, So because you're davening with his koyach, the certitude, the likelihood that he's going to answer your prayer is certain. Question 82, shall we? What's the connection? Because I believe in the Shir, I spoke about Birchas Kohanim. I don't see it in my questions here. A bracha has two parts. The koyach of the bracha and the garment of the bracha. If you say to the Eibishter, give me $1 billion, and the Eibishter gives you $1 billion in the level of Atzilus, you don't have $1 billion. You have nothing. Because it's spiritual. So the $1 billion needs to take on a garment, a form. The bracha of the Eibishter is to take on a form that it should manifest in the physical world. And you should have access to it. You should be able to use it. That makes sense, right? This combination, that you're asking Hashem for something, and the Eibishter is the Eibishter, and his hashpah, the way he sends it to you is from a spiritual world to a physical world. And then it has to take on a garment of the physical world, has a lot of steps. And there's all kinds of possibilities that those steps should be blocked. The notion of tefillah richta is that you're standing in front of the Eibishter and you're sensing his presence and you're asking him to give you the koyach of tefillah. So it's this, both of these ideas are redeemed. In other words, the prayer is coming from such a high place that A, the Eibishter gives you what you want, and B, you're a physical person. And you're standing in front of his presence. You're sensing him. You're feeling the Eibishter. That affects that not only is the bracha from the Eibishter being given, the bracha from the Eibishter is being delivered. In other words, because you have raised yourself into a place where the Eibishter gives you koyach for tefillah, that affects that the channel by which the Eibishter delivers it to the world is unobstructed. There's not that many steps, in other words. There's not that many steps. It's a much more direct channel. That's what arich means. Arich means long. Long means you go higher and it comes lower. One of the aspects of that is not only that you're reaching higher, but that the ability to bring it into the world is more secure. I think that's the answer to your question. The vart is, the pnimius of davening is not asking for our needs. The pnimius of davening is connecting to Hashem. Now, to many people, the pnimius and the chitzenius conflict. If I have needs, if I need something, right? All of us today need something. Today is Erev Chedesh Sivan Tavshin Pei Beis. There's something going on in the New York State Congress that has to do with the future chinuch of Yiddish kinder, which is shreklach. It's like Soviet Russia. It's like our whole history all over again. That the Goyishkeit is going to interfere in chinuch al talis hakodesh, and maybe the Jews are going to have to show their ability for Mesiras Nefesh. I don't know what it's going to take. But today's a serious day. It's a very, very serious day. It's today. And we need the Eibishter's bracha in the physical world. And I don't want to start going into whether we deserve it or not, whether we earned this or not. These are all shtusim. The bottom line is we're talking chinuch Yirah Ila'a. This is our most precious. So we need something to happen in the physical world. So wait, so we come to the Eibishter with a request. So the Alter Rebbe says, the chitzonius of tefillah is the request. The pnimius of tefillah is the connection. Right? On the outer level, davening is, we need today that people who don't understand our life and our chinuch and how important our children are to us should leave us alone. Right? The Rebbe said, do not mix with the nikesh of Yisrael. Do not touch our children. We've been going through this for thousands of years, and now it's happening in America, in a land that was built on freedom of religion. So we need a bracha from the Eibishter. So we ask. Tefillah richta means there's another side to davening. The other davening is connection. I should be connected to the Eibishter. And the Alter Rebbe's argument, the Chassidus argument is, if the connection to the Eibishter is at the highest level that it could possibly be, the bakasha is granted. So those are the two components. We always ask. We ask for many things. The 6 words, Hashem Sefasai, Tiftach, Api Chasidus, mean that we're not simply coming and asking as someone who's separate from Eibush that asks, but they've reached a state of Yirah Ila'a. We're connecting to Hashem. We have a sense of His presence. And then the request comes from a different place. And when the request comes from a distant place, he grants it. And it comes down into the physical world. And this is the chap, right? You could say this both ways, right? What is davening about? What is davening about? A person who has needs is thinking about himself. A person who wants to connect about the Eibishter, his need is connected to the Eibishter. To many people, those two things are mutually exclusive. If I'm busy with me, I'm not busy with him. If I'm busy with him, I'm busy with me. And the Alter Rebbe is exactly the opposite. The best way to get your needs granted is to connect to him. And the label of that attitude, the quote that represents that philosophy is Tfilah Richter, or the 6 words Hashem Sefasai Tiftach Afiyah. And the argument is you'll get what you need. That's the important thing. The bracha will come b'payil. You understand? I understand. Okay. Now Rabbi said 82. 82. Now from 82 was already my shir. In other words, the first, whatever questions this is, 6 questions, is Pashat the Maimed inside. And beginning with 82 was the beginning of my lecture. Okay? I have a series of ideas that I want to present. This was the first idea that I wanted to present. The power of Tfilah B'tzibur. Right? What lies at the base of Tfilah B'tzibur? That when we daven, he's davening with us. He's the 11th man. Okay, Asara, Shayeshu, Ve'eskim, B'teira, Shechina, Shruya. Right? Let's read it inside. Question 82. What does the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch say about davening with 10 Yidden, a Minyan? What is the answer? That the Eibishter will never not answer. He will always give you what you ask. When you daven with a Minyan, the Eibishter will always give you what you ask. When you daven with a Minyan, Hashem will always give you what you ask. Try davening with a Minyan, try it. And it's put in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, in Halacha. 83. What is the pasuk quoted to support that idea? Hein, Hey Nun, Kel, Aleph Lamed, Kabir, Chof Beis Yud Reish, Lo Yimas, Lo Yez Lamed, Aleph Yimas, Yud Mem, Aleph Samach. Hein, it is true, Kel, Hashem, Kabir, a prayer that is awesome, Lo Yimas, it cannot be disgusted by it. Hein, Kel, Kabir, Lo Yimas. That when Yidden daven together, Hashem cannot be memaz b'tfilas Adam. When you daven by yourself, you need all kinds of schusim. When you daven with a minyan, the collective power gives you a certainty that the Eibishter is going to answer your prayer. Kabir, Chof Beis Yud Reish, Lo Yimas, Godel Mo'oid, Otzum, Adir, Nehedar, Niflo. Okay, that's what it means. Let's see if I can get it in English. Great. Okay? Now, question 84. What is the first explanation I gave you for this? What is the first explanation? Not the second one. What's the first explanation? The first explanation is what the Rebbe have in the back of the Siddur. That a child comes to his father and says, give me something. This is the famous word. A child has a need and he comes to his father and he asks his father for his need. The father either will or won't give him what he needs. Why? He decides the child deserves it. And what's worse, and this is really a very serious part of parenting, not only does my child deserve it, is it good for him? Is it good for this child to get this need? Or is it preferred that he doesn't have it? So there's judgment, right? Now, what happens if a child has a need and all of the siblings come to the father together and say, he needs it, give it to him? So now the father is responding to something different. He's not responding to that child's needs. He's responding to his children's unity. He's responding to the gut Bruderschaft, to the brotherhood. And the father has no... Right, I always say the same thing. God has a weakness. You know that. You know that God has a weakness? Did you know that God could be manipulated? There's a nope, no. And you know what the problem is? Stuck is a pretty good one, but that's not the one. The problem is that God's weakness is also our weakness. Unity. Shalom. The Midrashim say that the 2 worst generations in history were not punished. The Deir HaFlaga was not punished. They were just dispersed. The Deir Achav Ben Omri were so successful. They were the Shoyim Gemurim. They were pagans. They were Evdei Avodah Zarah. They were Shtufei Zima. There was not a sin they didn't commit. But They were good with each other. They were good with each other. And when you have shalom, the Eibishter is kvayachal vulnerable. Hashem has a weakness. It says Hashem la yisa ponim, and then there's yisa ponim, is Hashem ponim elecha. Whatever, the Gemara speaks about this in a different way. But the Eibishter's weakness is shalom. And that's the first pshat. When you daven with a minyan, the reason it's successful and effective is because of the brotherhood. That's the first explanation. But that first explanation is not the one that's negated in our Maimon, even though it may be a better explanation. And yes, your point about tzedakah is a pretty good one. There was a Jew that I knew. I didn't know him well. His name was Mendel Drisnell. He passed away during COVID. He used to drive his son to Ocean Parkway every day and drop him off. I was a young teacher and needed a ride back to Crown Heights, and I would often piggyback. He would take me back. So he told me in one of our car rides that the Rebbe said once in a Fabrengen, I don't know if it's in a Sikha, in a printed Sikha, this is what he told me, that the Rebbe said once in a Fabrengen, that there were 3 countries. One country was based on Torah, and from them there's nothing left. One country that's based on Avodah, and they're surviving with Mesidus Nefesh. And one country which is based on Gemilas Chasadim, and they remain untouched. And he started crying. It's like when I'm Medina from Torah, that meant Poland. Von there is Gunnish geblieben, there's nothing left. Then there was a Medina from Tefillah, from Avodah, mainly Russia, and this was in the Soviet days, and they're surviving with Mesidus Nefesh. And then there's a country which is based on Gemilas Chasadim, and he meant America, and they're untouched, and he started to cry. So your point about tzedakah is well taken. American Jews were not frum, but they gave so much tzedakah. It's indescribable. The amount of tzedakah American Jews give and gave is unreal, is unbelievable. And the Rebbe says that Geblim Gans, they remained whole. So tzedakah is a pretty good example. But what says in the Sfarim is shalom. So why does a minyan work? I got 10 Jews in a room that can do something collaboratively. Yeah, peace. That's the first teretz. But wait, what's the quote the Alter Rebbe quoted from his Rabbeim to support this? That's the answer to the question 85. What a Chassidic Fabrengen can achieve, even our archangel, the Malach of Yidden is Mechol, cannot achieve. What's the source of that power? Ahavas Yisroel. So the first explanation for why davening with a minyan is effective is because of shalom. That's only the first explanation. We're soon going to have a second explanation. Okay? You see what I'm doing? We learn the Maimon inside. And I'm going to try my best a little bit to develop the idea of what Tfilah Arichta means. So the first discussion that I'm having with you is about the idea of the koyach of davening with a minyan. So davening with a minyan is effective for 2 reasons. The first is because of the Ma'ila of Shalom. Now, question 86, what is the mashal he gave to explain it? I already told you the mashal, that when the child comes himself, the father has to evaluate it. But when the child comes with all the other brothers and sisters, and there's Shalom v'Shalva b'neim, and they're collectively asking on behalf of their sibling, so the father is responding to a different thing. He's not responding to the request. He's responding to the peace of his descendants. So I just did answers 84, 85, and 86. Did you follow?
No. What's 86?
What's 86? The mashal about one when all the children come together to ask the father for the needs of one. That's 86.
It's on the same they're telling with the minyan. Like it's not that everyone's asking for each other's. Everyone's not coming together to ask for one of the sons.
Sure they are. They're saying the same exact words. Together. They're asking for Baruch Aleinu, they're asking for Refa'enu, we're asking for health, we're asking for Parnasa. Fine. But we're davening collectively, so we're drawing strength from one another. So even though you're saying one thing and he's saying another thing, but you're saying it together with the group. You're saying it in such a way, I support your personal prayer, you support my personal prayer. Yeah? We managed to get into the same shul. You know the story with the 3 shuls, yeah? The shul I daven in, the shul I don't daven in, and the shul I will never step into. We all stepped into the same room, we're davening together. So we're supporting one another in our tefillas. So 84, 85, and 86 is one explanation for why davening is effective, and the code word is when Jews get along, the Eibishter has to answer.
What's 85?
Was achsidisch avein kein uftan, kein michol, sam she'esol nicht uftan.
It's supposed to be 4. I did that for 84.
Oh, 84 is what's the first explanation I gave? That there's Achdus. You have to understand, I write these questions and we review these questions, not so you should get back. This is reviewing a shiur. It's like I'm giving you the shiur a second time. That's why for me, the reason I spend so much time on the questions is because we're learning it a second time. It allows it to marinate, it allows us to settle in, which is very helpful. Go ahead.
When we say 10 Jews going together, do we mean that they're saying the same word at the same time? Or the fact that
In halacha, yes. In pnimius, they're in the same room. We're talking about a minyan.
Okay.
That means they're holding pretty much in the same place. If you go into Manhattan and big office buildings and very successful corporations, and you see the day stop, and Yidden from all types, you go into the Chabad house of Midtown Manhattan, and you just do whatever minyan is, 100 young light from every big apartment building in the neighborhood comes running in. You have every kind of Jew. Every kind of Jew. Join in. Some of them may not even so frum. They come to be mishtatef in the minyan, to be a 10th man, or whatever the case is. And they're davening together. That's togetherness. That's togetherness. In Kippur, it says, if you go to a shul and there's no Rasha, go to a different shul. But let's move on, people. I want to move on. 87. What is the second explanation I gave for the advantage of davening with a minyan? The answer is, when you daven with a minyan, the Eibush is the 11th man. So the first explanation is Shalom. The Eibush is the 11th man. When 10 Yidden daven together, the Eibush joins in the tefillah. Okay? Now why? What's the pshat when you have 10 Yidden, the Eibush is 11th man? So look at question 88. What does it say in Yigras HaKodesh 23? That it says in Mishnah. It says in Chazal. The Mishnah says Asara Shoeshim Ve'iskim Batera, but it says in Chazal Al Kol B'Yasara Shchinta Sharia. You get 10 Jews in a room, the Shechina joins. Okay? And here's the chap. The Shechina is the Madrega of Yud Gimel Middos of Rachamim. Right? There's two concepts in Kabbalah, right? One is the concept of 10, and one is the concept of 13. 10 is Ishtalshalus. 13 is higher than Ishtalshalus. When you get 10 people, it adds up to 13. The Eibush becomes the 11th man. You know, when you count for a minyan, you say Hashia Samecha, right? Why do you say Hashia Samecha? Because it has 10 words. Hashia Es Amecha Varech Es Nachasecha Udem Benasim Ado Elam. But right, but you're supposed to sing Hashia Es Amecha Varech Es Nachasecha Udem Benasim Ado Elam. It adds up to 13. If you sing it, you have 13. 10 represents Hishtalshalos. 10 represents a relationship with the Eibush which is reasonable, so he judges. 13 represents higher than Hishtalshalos. The significance of the Shechina joining the 10 Yidden on a level which is called Hashra, not Hislapshus, is a Gimel Middos Rachamim. This is why the prayer is answered. Because you're reaching Kesed. You're reaching higher than Atzilus. Okay? What does it... So this is the answer. It's 87. What is the second explanation I gave? Then the Eibush joins with you, and when the Eibush joins with you, you have a Gil of Gimel Middos Rachamim, of Ein Safe. And it's implicit in halacha. In the halachas of Aseres Meitzuvah and Hashem, which we'll see soon. Now let's do 88.
Why isn't it ideal to have 13?
You don't need 13. You have to understand something. Some things you can't create. You can only open yourself up to. 10 people is a minyan, 11 people is a minyan, 50 people, 1,000 people is a minyan. But it opens yourself up to something which is more than what the minyan itself accomplished, which is that the Eibush joins. The Eibush becomes the 13th man. Okay, now, 88. Let me do it correctly. What does the Yigras HaKodesh say? That Kasha Shamaiti Me Rabbi Yisrael, Shamaiti Mimari, I heard from my teacher or my teachers, that if you have 10 Jews in a room, and they're not necessarily learning and davening, doing whatever they're doing, and there'd be a malach in that room, Tipol, Allah, Ema, Vafacha, the malach would be overwhelmed with fear from the presence of the Eibush. This is the answer to 88. What does it say in Yigras HaKodesh 23? I heard from my teachers that if you have 10 people in a room and there'd be a malach there, an angel, the angel would be overwhelmed by the presence of the Shechina. That's what I heard from my Rebbes. That's the koyach of tefillah. And this is the second idea. The power of a minyan is not just shalom, the power of a minyan is that the Eibush joins. Okay? So now, Question 89. I love this. I mamish love this. What is added in Tanya, end of chapter 11? Does anybody remember what I said? Sof Perek Yud Aleph. What is at the end of chapter 11? That if you have 10 Rishoyim Gemurim, 10 Rishoyim Gemurim, that have absolutely no even guilt, the Eibishter would be the 11th man, because Akol Be'asar Shechinta Shari Ala Oila. When it says that 10 Yidden together bring the presence of the Shechina, it doesn't necessarily have to be tzaddikim, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be davening and learning. Even 10 Rashas, perfect Rashas, complete Rashas, comprehensive Rashas. If you 10 Yidden get together, even if they're big Rishoyim, the biggest Rishoyim imaginable, the Eibush is the 11th man. So in the Gerz HaKedesh Chav Gimel, it says 10 Yidden get together, the Shechina rests. I don't know if you know how the Gerz HaKedesh 23 works. The Gerz HaKedesh Chav Gimel is talking about what people do in shul between davening. Right? People come to shul for Mincha Ma'ariv. The problem with Mincha Ma'ariv is that there's a break in between. So what do? You talk politics, you talk business, you talk Lashon Hara, cooking at Seifa, and Alter Rebbe says, Chavre, the Eibishter didn't work out when Mincha ended. As long as there's 10 of you, he's the 11th man. Don't embarrass him. That's what Alter Rebbe's Matziyah, that between Mincha Ma'ariv, they should learn in Yankiv, and they should learn Mishnayos, they should do something holy, because the Eibishter is there. So even in Chav Gimel, he's not talking B'shas HaTfilah. But in Likutei Amorim, Sefasai, Bain, and Perek Yirav, Alter Rebbe is talking about a Rosh Gomor, has no conscious sense of the Eibishter. But a makif of the Eibishter he has, Kemaima, Akol, Bei, Asar, Ashchin, Teshayel, Elam, any group of 10 Yidden, even the Shoyim Gemurim, the Eibishter is the 11th man.
About the learning Torah.
The learning Torah, it's even better. And that's the whole point. You don't want to be goyed in what's called Kalna the Shchinta. You don't want to embarrass the Shechina. Okay, question 90. What's the reason this kind of prayer works for sure? The answer is because this is the Eibush, the Shechina, which is with 10 Yidden, is Yud Gimel Middos of Rachamim. Yud Gimel Middos of Rachamim. Now, if you remember, I explained it to you that when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu the Yud Gimel Middos of Rachamim, so Moshe started questioning them. One of the Yud Gimel Middos of Rachamim is Erech Apayim. So Moshe says today, Erech Apayim means he's going to hold his anger long. You know what the word Erech Apayim is like? In Efeni Havali Arucha, or Refuah Shleima Arucha, delay it. Refuah Shleima means heal me. Hali Arucha means delay it. Erech Apayim, elongate it, let it last. Erech Apayim means Hashem hold his anger. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, why? So the Eibush is for the Shoyim. So Moshe tells the Eibush the Shoyim Yamusu. If they're the Shoyim, they should die. And Hashem says, really? Chayacha, I swear, you're going to use this prayer on me. And then when the Ma'aseh of the Meraglim happened, and the Eibush wanted to kill all the Jewish people, so Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem Erech Apayim. So the Eibush says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you told me the Shoyim Yamusu. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Eibush, and you told me, Afar Shoyim. Right, that's called Seder Tefillah, right? Teach me all of your middos. All of your middos is not the 10 Sfiris, all of your middos is the Shleish and middos Aracham Amina Bachanina. And when there's 10 Yidden in a room, especially those 10 Yidden Adavan, the idea that the Eibush is the 11th man is the Madreg of Yud Gimel Tzrachmim. That's why the prayer is certainly answered. Yud Gimel Middos Arachmim you get even if you don't deserve. It's Rachmim. Now, question 91. What, if anything, does this have to do with Aseret Simei Tshuva? Chavre, you're listening to that? 91. Aseret Simei Tshuva is a time of Yom Tzarachma. Aseret Simei Tshuva, during the 10 days of mercy, during 10 days of Tshuva, the revelation of 13 attributes of mercy is always. So the Gemara says, Kan b'yachad, kan b'tzibur, dir shavai b'yimatzah, k'ro b'yesei korev. What does that mean? Aseret Simei Tshuva. Hashem is close to us. That the power of the prayer of one in Aseret Simei Tshuva is equal to the power of the prayer of a minyan all year. Because all year you need a minyan to bring the Yud Gimel Middos Rachamim. Aseret Simei Tshuva, one person brings the Middos Rachamim because the Gimel Middos Rachamim are automatically available. You understand? So even though, as Reb Shlomo is pointing out, I'm calling the Eibishter the 11th man, but the 11th man is the Madreg of Shleishes Midas Rachamim. And that's what the Gemara says. A whole year you need a minyan to get to Shleishes Midas Rachamim. Can be Yochid, can be Tzibur. But Naseres Yemei Tshuva, the Gimel Midas Rachamim is available because of the season. It's a season of closeness between Hashem and us. Kira v'amar l'nitzutz. That's how it's in Lashon HaChasidus. But in Lashon HaHalacha, there's a deal of there's a Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah. In other words, it's not only a Maimon Chassidus. There's a revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy. And therefore, one person has the power of a minyan because he's davening with the Eibishter. And a whole year we have that koyach when you have a tzibur. You daven with 10. Okay? So Rabbi Sai, here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. We're learning about Tefillah Richta. Right, this is the topic of this Maimed. We learned a lot about Torah, but this is the topic of this Maimed. We're learning about Tefillah Richta. What's the Pshat Tefillah Richta? That we're connected to Hashem in such a way that we need Him to help us pray. And I'm trying to find words with which to explain it. So in the last shir, the shir I gave you on Thursday, I gave you the first example. The first example is the koyach of davening with a minyan that you have Yigimel Middos of Rachamim. Meaning, the idea that we're so connected to the Eibishter, that as if the Eibishter gives us words, as represented by the 6 words, Hashem Sefasai, Tiftach, Yirah Ila'a, is because the koyach of a tzibur. Are we good? Now look at question 92. Next point. Now we didn't have a chance to do this in the last class, and it's already after 9 o'clock. I just touched on it as I was walking out. I just want to move on to my second. In other words, I have a series of thoughts. I hope I'll keep them in my head. I have a series of thoughts that I wish to share as a means of articulating what is the pshat Tefillah Richta. So the first idea that I gave you is the idea that Tefillah Richta is connected to the Gimel Middos of Rachamim, not just to the 10 Sfiris. Now comes the second idea. We say every day in Ashrei, Karav Hashem b'chol keid v'chol ykראהו באמת. Hashem is close to all those who call Him. Those who call Him be'emes, ask any yeshiva bacher, ein emes ela Torah. In Ayin Bais it says, ein emes ela tefila. It's Ayin Bais, and I don't know if there's such a chazal, but the Rebbe Rashab in the second chelik of Ayin Bais, ein emes ela tefila. Why? There's different kinds of tefillah. A regular tefillah is not emes. But a tefillah richta is. A tefillah richta is. Okay? And this is the new topic that we need to explore. In other words, we read inside what tefillah richta means. It's all of 10 lines. Perek Dalet. It's mamish 10 lines. We read it. We read the whole Perek Dalet in the last year. The first example that I'm giving you for Tefillah Richta is Inyan davening with a minyan. Now we're moving on to the second example, the idea of davening with an emes. Ein emes elo tefillah, not ein emes elo Torah. That if a yid davens on a madrega of emes, so then the Eibishter answers the prayer for sure. So what is my explanation for this? What do I want to talk about as a way of illustrating this? And the answer to this question, I want to discuss with you how the Rebbe explains the prayer of Chana. Tefillas Chana, the prayer of Chana. Okay, I'm going to finish the class in 60 seconds. Okay, Chana comes to the Beis HaMikdash. She refuses to eat. She refuses to eat. Her whole family is eating. She refuses to eat. She's very bitter. V'moras nefesh. She's verbittert because she has no children, and it's absolutely eating her up alive. And she goes into the Beis HaMikdash, right? You can't hear a word, and she's crying, and she's talking to Hashem in a whisper. Understand that until the times of Chana, which is about 300-400 years into the Beis HaMikdash, into the Mishkan, you talk to God like you talk to another person. If you have a conversation with another person, you mutter, you scream like a Meshuggah, you repeat yourself 10 times, or you measure your words. If I want to talk to you and I want you to hear what I have to say, maybe even give in something, I'm going to be very careful in the words I choose. I'm going to be very selective in the words I choose. I'm going to be very careful to use, and be careful not to be a nudge. I'm going to be careful to speak clearly and to make my point, and as they say in the America, get to the point as quickly as possible. And that's how Yidden davened. When you talk to God when you talk to man. They spoke Hebrew, Lashon Kodesh, real Hebrew, and they knew the language well. L'chei the tefillah is a mitzvah. If it's a mitzvah, it has to be b'dibur. In other words, in Minyan Taryag. Mitzvahs machshava, not mitzvahs. She's muttering. She's mumbling. She's muttering. And Chana Eli sees that she's hysterical. In other words, she's not davening. She's not treating Hashem like a man. So this is called maftzir. She's nudging. She's repeating herself. She's muttering. She's mumbling. And Eli says to her, "You're shikir. You're drunk. This is not how you talk to the Eibush. To go home, sober up." When you brought a carbon, they got shikir frequently because they ate meat and they drank wine. And they didn't drink Bartanuda 5%, you understand? They drank wine. And there wasn't soda, that's all there was. So he says, "You're shikir, you brought a carbon, you had a big day, you feasted, you probably ate." He didn't know that she was fasting. "You probably ate, you probably drank, you're a little bit drunk. Get him." And she says, "I'm not drunk at all. Yayin v'sheich alei," she says, "I haven't touched wine." And she said, "I can hear the Rebbe saying the words. I was able to hear the Rebbe say the Haftei Rosh Hashanah. Isha k'shasaru achanoichi." When you hear the Rebbe say, "Isha," I'm a bitter woman. And I'm pouring hashtapchas hanefesh. I'm pouring out myself before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Eli answers her, "Lichi l'shalom, go in peace. V'lekei Yisrael, the God of Israel, yitain es sheila seich," without an aleph, should give you your request. Asher sha'alt mimah, they were asking from him. So the Rebbe has a question. I'll speak in your language. You ever met a drunk who admits he's drunk? He thinks she's drunk, and he tells her she's drunk. She says, "No, I'm not drunk, I'm bitter." So he says, "Okay, you're not drunk, you're bitter. Geg is unterreit." The Rebbe wants to know what's the conversation. If he thought she's shikir, so what does it help if she says she's not? And rather he grants her request. And the Rebbe says the tenet to this is that Chana's tefillah is a tefillah richtas on a different level. Now the Rebbe doesn't use the word tefillah richta. I want to be very clear. This is L'kutei Sichas Chelik Kitas Rosh Hashanah, one of my favorite sichas. Okay, but it's al derech zeh. B'kvolos it's al derech zeh. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow, Mr.